Hello and welcome. It is the August edition of Anglo-Irish Astro Geeks. We was away in July because we were on holiday. Staycations mostly, I think we all had. But yeah, we were away and we had some fun and we got to kick back and enjoy ourselves. And we kept looking for stories and stuff. But we're back. So, without further ado, I'm Nick Yvetts.
I'm Anne Dunn from Astronomy Ireland magazine.
Susan McKeown from Dublin, Ireland.
And our special guest this month.
Sorry, I already said my name. It's Mary McIntyre.
Welcome to the show, Mary. So, right.
Thank you.
Neil can't be with us due to family issues, but I'm sure he'll be back next month. And we actually have a really fascinating guest next month. I think we're going to try and bring you back, Mary, for that as well. Nothing more said about it, apart from the fact that I have now purchased a copy of Introduction to Space Weather, which I'm trying to get through, because it's all relevant to the show next month. And I'll let you all think about that as to either who we've got and what we're going to discuss. But, moving on, as they say in the best of shows, I think we'll get Anne to do the news items and what to see in the sky, and then we'll come back and we'll get the rest of the show down. Get down, Shep.
Yeah, wonderful.
Okay, will I start off then? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm starting with Thursday the 12th of August because that is the peak of the Perseids meteor shower, which is like the best shower of the year usually, although it's been very cloudy lately, but you know, we've a few more days to go before it starts, so hopefully the clouds will have moved a bit. And on the plus side, the nights are getting longer and darker, so you do have a lot more time to see them than you would have, you know, if it was a month ago. And on the 12th, the moon sets around 10:30. So we'll have a nice dark sky for viewing if it's clear. And don't worry if it's cloudy on the night, because these sort of begin around, is it the 25th of July, and it goes on then for about another 6 days after the 12th. So we've loads of nights to look, but the best peak viewing is the 12th. And you can get up to 80 in an hour, like it's one of the best, and they're very, very fast moving. But yeah, and the origin of them is the comet Swift-Tuttle. I think Mary might talk about that in a moment, but I'll go on to Friday, August the 20th. Saturn will be visible just 4.2 degrees above a 97% moon in the south. And both Saturn and Jupiter are in opposition this month. Saturn has already been, but it's still very bright, and Jupiter will be on August the 20th. So they're brightest and closest to Earth at the moment, so they're looking gorgeous. August the 21st, Jupiter will be shining brightly 5 degrees above the full moon in the south. So this should be a really beautiful sight, and we're trying to get a shot of it in the same frame. And they'll be visible absolutely for the whole night. So that's, you know, plenty of time to get a look, clouds permitting, of course. And then for early risers, on Saturday, August the 28th, Uranus will be 3.5 degrees to the upper left of a 70% moon. And you should be able to easily pick out Uranus with binoculars, and the moon will be able to guide you. Now that's dawn, high in the south, and the same on Monday, the August the 30th. Pleiades, Hyades and Aldebaran will all be near the moon at dawn in the east. As for the noctilucent cloud season is almost over. It probably really is over, but I thought it was, and a friend sent me a photograph just a couple of days ago with both an aurora and the noctilucent clouds. So maybe have a look for an hour or so after sunset or before sunrise. You might be lucky. If anybody can remember them from last year when they were with Comet Neowise, and they were just spectacular. And noticed on the sky at night, Pete Lawrence said that they now believe that they might be actually caused, as well as the dust from meteors, they might be caused by rocket fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. So I don't know if Mary wanted to say any more about the meteors.
Yes, people that know me will know that we have 5 cameras on the UK Meteor network. One of them is overlapping with another one with a spectral grating on it. So hopefully we can do some spectra science on those. But it's really interesting how many meteors we're actually getting this week, even though we're still like technically a week away from the peak. Last night, just on our cameras alone, the four main cameras, we had 300 meteors and 131 of them were Perseids. And across the entire network, the important thing is that we have multiple stations capture the same event, and then you can triangulate and find out the orbit and exactly where it came from and all of that science. And we had 322 Perseids that had matched detections last night, which is just blowing my mind. It's so many and we're so far from the peak. So it just shows you, if you've got a clear sky, a lot happens up there. And like you said, the meteor showers like the Perseids have got a really kind of broad active period. The debris stream's very spread out, and it's worth observing every night from now until a week after, to be honest. It just keeps giving.
Fantastic. And we should probably tell people where to look in the sky.
Actually anywhere. The radiant of this meteor shower is in the constellation of Perseus, and the radiant is the point in the sky meteor showers are named after, because if you track the path back of any meteors, they will appear to come from that one spot. So that's how meteor showers get their name. So it's in Perseus, which is why it's the Perseids. But if you look directly at the radiant, you're looking at meteors that are coming straight on at you, so the trails are actually a bit shorter. But if you just go kind of 45 to 60 degrees away from the radiant, then you get much longer meteor trails. So basically choose a part of your sky that is the darkest from your location, that's kind of about 45 degrees away from the radiant, and that is probably the best way to observe it. But give your eyes chance to dark adapt, and then you will see all the faint ones. If you're constantly looking at your phone or putting torches on, you're just not going to see as many, because you'll only get the kind of bright ones. But with no moon around, you've got an opportunity to see a lot of fainter ones that you might have missed otherwise. So fingers crossed we do get some clear spells. And the other thing to note as well is, with all meteor showers, if the radiant is higher, the rates will go up, because obviously there's more sky that you can see them in from the radiant, because you've got the underneath bit as well. But on the dawn side of Earth, you always get more meteors, so the rates always go up in the few hours before dawn. So it's definitely worth staying up super late for, because the rates massively ramp up from midnight onwards. And so yeah, it's definitely worth staying up late for. The reason that happened is because the dawn side of Earth is facing the debris stream, so it's a bit like when you're out in the rain. If you turn to face the direction of the rain, you get wetter, and it's a very similar analogy really. So yeah, I love meteor showers.
I just ask, I'm just on binoculars myself. I still don't have a telescope, but would I have a good view myself? Or expect
Yes,
to?
you definitely don't want to be looking through binoculars. You want to see as much sky as possible, so you don't need anything special. All you need to do is get into a comfy chair. If you've got a garden recliner, that's fantastic, because you're going to be looking for a long time, so make sure you're not kind of putting a crick in your neck by looking upwards. Get a blanket as well, because even in August it can get really chilly overnight when you've been sat still in a deck chair for a while. So just have something to drink with you, and just something in a water bottle or whatever, or some hot chocolate, a comfy recliner, a blanket, and just use your eyes. And just try to keep track of what you've seen as well, because it's really important for meteor scientists to keep track of the rates of these things to help when predicting outbursts and that type of thing. And that's one of the things that the Meteor Network are doing. They've actually discovered a new meteor shower. The paper's just been published based off looking at the data from the cameras, but it's just really good to get visual reports as well. So when you've done that and you've got your count, all I do actually, because I don't want to put a torch on, I have a new page for every hour, and all I do in the dark with a pencil is just draw a mark on the page when I see something. That's all I record. And that means you're not having to constantly keep looking down, putting a torch on and ruining your night vision. So we've got a church in the village that chimes on the hour. So when we hear the bells, we just turn over the page on the pad and start again.
That's a great idea.
That's
Great
brilliant.
idea.
I love
Yeah.
it.
In fact, what a lot of people have done, and this is an advert for the good old-fashioned deck chair, is get a good old-fashioned deck chair, get it to a nice angle, and you can get one of those little click counters that you see people using at events to see how many people are coming through the ticket office.
Yes.
In fact, you don't even have to worry about looking for paper marks. Just every time you see one, it's a click, and you'll be quite surprised how quickly you actually rack up the meteors and the thing. And of course, the other way to do it is how I occasionally do it if I'm feeling really energetic, is I go out and sit in the car, turn on my 2-meter transceiver, and I listen for the most distant station I can get. Now, with a meteor trail, this is more for detecting the ion tail from trail, from a meteor. The radio signal at VHF bounces off the trail left by the meteor in the atmosphere, and you can actually use that to hear distant stations. You can do it with an FM radio, so you just need to know where there's a radio station just over your horizon, basically, and tune it to that frequency, and every now and again you will hear a brief burst from it as the radio signal bounces off the trail left by the meteor in the atmosphere.
Wow.
It's great because you can get a really good idea of what the peak was like, even if it's cloudy and raining. And you get it during the day as well, because quite often the focused peak of a meteor shower happens during daylight hours for us here. So the radio detection's a really good way of keeping track of what's going on, even in daylight and if it's raining. So we've got a radio antenna in the loft that does it as well. So it's very, very good. Actually, when you look at the heat maps produced by those radio detectors, you can really see that every night there are more meteors in the dawn hours, and every meteor shower has a focused peak in the diurnal peak that happens before dawn every single day. It's really interesting to see it, because we're always told this, we know this information, but to actually see it in a graph, it's really cool.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And of course, the thing is, you can also just blow somebody's mind with that piece of knowledge. I was counting meteors during the daylight. How can you do that? Well, I was listening for such and such a radio station, and every time one goes through the atmosphere, the radio signal from the radio station bounces off it, and I can hear it briefly, and that's my click. The look you get is quite amusing.
Well, on the subject of the ionisation trail, one thing, if any of you are going to attempt photographing meteors, it's actually not that difficult. And I made a video all about how to photograph meteors, which is on the UK Meteor Network YouTube channel. So if you're interested in learning that, just go try and find that video on YouTube. But one thing that's really good is I always shoot on continuous. And if you've had a bright event, you can very often see the ionisation trail in the subsequent frames, and it dissipates very slowly. So after, you'll have this kind of meteor that lasts 1 or 2 seconds usually at most, and then this ionization trail can take 30 minutes to fully evaporate. And it's amazing. It's just so amazing when you catch that. I've only done it about 4 times now, but one of the best ones I had was a Persig meteor in 2015, and it left a really bright ionization cloud. It was fantastic.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of radio amateurs actually try for a distance record using a program called FT8. So they will literally bounce the radio signal off the ionized trail and they're waiting for a response from somebody who could be anything over 3,000 kilometers away. I think the record stood last something around 4,500 kilometers via 70 centimeters transmission using FT8, because basically it's like a data squirt, and then you can get the information back from who received it, and then you can work out literally as the crow flies how far your signal went, bouncing off the trail left by a meteor. It's called meteor scatter.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. but I hasten to add you need a radio license to do it.
A radio license.
But
Okay.
they are very spectacular. I remember one time I was down in Waterford. It's really dark down there, and I didn't even have to go outside the door. I just looked out the window, and it was like a fireworks display. I never get it that good here in Dublin now.
No, it's I do find them very, very special, and I think they were called comet stars quite often in some of the mythology and legends, and they are just amazing. Even though we've got all the cameras, when it's around a peak, I love to still sit out there myself and watch with my eyes. It's really special.
Well, also one of the other descriptions from the past, particularly in the Middle Ages, it was described as the heavens weeping.
Yeah, the tears of St. Lawrence.
Yeah.
I see the picture that I think it was from 1894. It was painted in town, and it literally looks like it's raining light. And it was a local person who painted it. And the meteor shower had lasted for a number of days. And of course, the people in the town apparently thought that was it. It was the end of the world. But the picture itself is it's simple, but it's absolutely beautiful. And for him, the person to actually paint this, they definitely need to have seen something like it, because I don't think they made it up, because there was no social media or telly or anything like it, so it had to be something like he saw. And it's a very, very old painting, but it's just, we've been watching for a long time. I think only now we're all starting to put it down on paper and keep an eye on it.
Well, I think...
Yeah, it is important as well, because like the discovering resonances between some of the showers and asteroid strikes on Earth, and say the UK Meteor Network, or the Global Meteor Network, I should say, which is the camera systems we use now on UK1, they have actually discovered a new meteor shower just by just looking at the data, really studying it, and it's so important to have that record and study it properly.
Get some idea. Would there be any type of like pattern at all, Mary, that you can see? Obviously, there's probably seasonal, but
what with the showers?
With any meteor showers, like do you know exactly when you're going to see the next and what to expect?
You usually do to some extent. We've got the debris field fairly well mapped out. So what's difficult to predict is whether something will go into outburst. That can kind of happen. Some of the minor showers are well known for doing this. That's really hard to predict. But we do know how well spaced out the debris stream is. So some of the debris streams are very compact, and we'll know that the peak will last literally 5 hours or something, whereas others go for days and days. But I know the Geminids back in December, the night of the peak, I was out most of the night, hardly saw anything. The following night, I was exhausted because I'd been up all night, went to bed, and there were loads, and that was the day after the predicted peak. So sometimes they do surprise us. So it's always worth observing the night before and after the peak of any shower, just in case. It's rare that the peak is so focused that it's only a small number of hours. Usually it's like a few days or something.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind, of course, is when the parent comet does a close approach to Earth, that does enrich the stream and the material that's there. So we tend to see a few years after perihelion of the parent comet that you will get a enhanced meteor shower. It's not always the case, and I'm going to put my Patrick Moore hat on and says I really wish the press would stop hyping up all the meteor showers, all the comets, saying it's going to be a naked eye comet and it's going to be brilliant in daylight, or that XYZ meteor shower is going to be a perfect storm of meteors. Unfortunately, all it does is put people off, because they go out and look, and it's nothing like they've been promised by the media, and it's all the media's fault.
Well, the other thing as well is that people, you tell them what the rate's likely to be, and even if it's a realistic number, people expect it to be evenly spaced out throughout that hour. And sometimes you can see 30 meteors in 2 minutes and then nothing for 20 minutes. They are fully random, and they sometimes do come in groups. And very often they may be happening behind your head, but if you turn around and start observing that way, they'll all happen behind your head again. So just pick a direction, stick with it, and just give it some time, because I think because of the way the press hype things, people go out and expect to see an instant sky full of meteors, and first of all, it takes 20 minutes for your eyes to be adapted enough to see the faint ones, and most of them are faint. These are tiny pieces of debris after all. So people just need to give it some time and just persevere, because if you just pop your head out the door for 5 minutes and say, no, it's rubbish, then you've not really given yourself a lot of chance to see anything.
And I really think the other thing is, of course, the fact is a lot of people don't, as you point out, they don't let their eyes get adapted. And either that, or unfortunately, the peak of the shower is during daylight, and then it's really a radio job. But you can do it at home with a simple FM receiver. So as long as you know a radio station that you can't receive normally, once you start hearing it, then you know that you've got meteor activity, and you can say, hey, I actually heard a meteor because such and such a station, which is over the horizon, was briefly audible and receivable because of a meteor going through the atmosphere. It can actually be quite good fun.
Oh, sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
So, for instance, you would need to find a radio station in your part of Ireland that you can't hear on FM, on VHF. And hopefully, when a meteor goes through the sky and leaves a trail, you may get to hear a burst of music or chat or something unexpectedly on that frequency. It does tend to work quite nicely, actually. And as I say,
Like a little echo, is it?
it's basically the radio signal gets bounced,
Yeah.
which normally wouldn't happen. Anything that's on FM, VHF FM, like Radio 1 or whatever, normally is line of sight. So, or if it's a low power station that's just serving a local community, that might be even better, because then you know that it's being bounced to you from wherever that station is.
Yeah.
So this curve of the Earth, how far away were we looking? Like Germany further?
Sometimes it can just be 100 miles.
Oh, right.
Wow.
That sounds really interesting.
VHF is very much short range line of sight communications. So a lot of the stations don't have very powerful transmitters, so they can't exceed a certain distance. And those are the type of stations you use. Radio 1, I think they have something like 100 kilowatts of power behind them. So yes, you can pretty much get it all over the United Kingdom and stuff. And it's also relayed through different transmitters. So really, you look for a local station that maybe the next couple of counties over you don't normally get. If you're hearing it at night or during the day, suddenly, then you're hearing it because it's been bounced off the trail from a meteor.
That's fascinating.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, we have a few local radio stations. I know for driving across Ireland, you'll lose one and then another one will come in. So it's one of them we're looking for.
Yeah.
Actually, I've been driving in my car and just going, say, 40, 50 miles in Ireland, and your radio will just go beep, and then you'll be onto a completely different station. It's just because it's so localised, it could be 30 miles radius, if that, and then you go through that part and you're onto another one, So it's pretty easy, I'd say, to pick up a few of them here.
Oh, I might give that a try.
Yeah.
Yeah, worth it, definitely.
Okay, now, Mary, I also know that you are a sketcher extraordinaire. Sorry,
Yes.
I'm trading on insider knowledge here. In fact, your lunar craters are quite a piece of work, quite a piece of artwork. I have to admit that.
Thank you. I started sketching, must have been about 8 years ago. And the reason was I'd got into astrophotography and it all became about the pictures. And I realised one day that I hadn't looked through an eyepiece or a pair of binoculars for almost a year. And I was kidding myself that I was learning stuff by taking photographs, but that just wasn't happening, because you get a picture, and it's not, I'm not saying that astrophotography is easy, because it's not. It takes a lot of skill, and the processing is really important. But I was processing the image to make it look nice and then never looking at it again. So I'd be taking pictures of the moon, but not looking at the crater shadows or the shape of those shadows or how they evolved when I looked back and took another picture a few hours later. And I wasn't ever remembering the names of the craters in my photographs. And it was when I realised I hadn't kind of looked through an eyepiece, I thought, right, I'm just going to start simple and just sketch Jupiter and map the position of the Galileans. And this was just with my 4-inch refractor, so you don't see a lot of Jupiter with that. But straight away, it made me realise how closely you have to look at something in order to draw it. And it was just like, okay, this is hard. And I stuck with it. And the crater sketches I do have all been from photographs so far, but I do a mixture of stuff from photographs and at the eyepiece with deep sky and solar stuff. And so I've sketched comets and star clusters and nebulae and all sorts of stuff like that. So I just love it. And honestly, my lunar knowledge just snowballed once I started sketching. It really did. You can recognise any crater at any sun angle when you've sketched it a couple of times, because you just get to know it really well. You get to know it inside out. So yeah, not all my, quite often I think my sketches aren't that good, and then I'll finish them and come down the next day and think, oh, did I draw that? It's that thing of seeing your own faults, I think, when you've been slaving over something for a couple of hours. But no, I love just experimenting with different mediums. Pastels is definitely my go-to, but I do pencil as well, and I do modelling of craters. I've made 3D models and of craters and asteroids and stuff like that. But it's great because I love art, and combining art and astronomy together is just phenomenal. So everybody, please try to sketch, because it's worth it.
Yeah, I've seen your work, Mary. It's absolutely fabulous. I mean, I do think maybe the drawings you do as well are even, I don't know, the more interesting even than the photography, just to have a look at the shadow, and you must enjoy it a lot.
I do. I love it. I really do. It's very mindful. Recently I did a challenge where I made myself do an astronomy sketch or inspired piece of art every day for 2 months. And It was so hard by the time I got into month 2. But you know what, it was a better use of my time before bed. If I'd been busy during the day, I would sit there and just sketch. And you have to be so present when you're doing something like that, that your mind just switches off from everything else. And I was sleeping better because it was such a great way to unwind. And once I realised that it was actually a really good way of relaxing before bed, far better than watching junk on YouTube, I basically started to do it every night at bedtime, because I just found it just made me ready for sleep. I was so calm, and it was so good. And I have been sketching still since then, but just not every single day.
So you're probably exhausting any other mental energy I had pent up and going into the drawings, and presto, go to sleep.
Absolutely. It really is very relaxing. And I think what's really interesting to me, I teach astronomy sketching workshops at events, and I always try to get photographs of everybody's work and put collages together. And what I love is when we'll all be working from a particular photograph or a couple of photographs, and everybody's sketch looks like that crater, but no two people's sketches look the same. And that's amazing. Everybody's handwriting's different, everybody's drawing style is also different. And when I teach this, one thing I don't want people to do is just mimic my entire style of drawing, because that wouldn't be their sketch anymore. So I teach it in simple terms and tell people how to approach it. And every single person that comes to my workshops will say, oh, I'm rubbish at drawing, I've never done it before. And at the end of it, they've got something that looks just like the crater that they're drawing, and they're so pleased. And it's just a case of following some straightforward steps, really, and looking at it with a bit more of an abstract eye. And I did something in a talk recently about sketching where I took a photograph of, it was around Plato. It was quite a big field of view that I'd sketched. And as a whole, it looks like a very impressive sketch, but I cropped lots of different areas out of it, and when you actually zoom in on it, you can see that it's a white dot with a black triangle, and another bit will be a line with a black triangle, and each component of that sketch is a very, very simple series of shapes, but the light and shade then come together to produce this three-dimensional object. And it's very approachable if you take it in small chunks, and it will all come together at the end.
Breaking it down into base elements, and then they all come together. If you
Definitely.
Yeah,
it's just amazing. And I think I always Caroline Herschel is just my idol, and I just think I hope she'd be proud that I'm doing this. And,
I think she would, Mary. It's absolutely stunning. I was just wondering if you wanted to tell people where can they see your sketches anywhere.
If you go to marymcIntyreastronomy.co.uk, there is a gallery there, and all my galleries are subdivided, so you can go and see my astronomy sketches and art gallery on my website.
Yeah, I think you will be very impressed. You're so good.
Yeah,
thank you.
Don't worry, I will put a link into the show notes on YouTube for everybody to find it.
Yeah.
The trouble is, I've now got folders full of these things, and I've got canvases that I've painted, and I don't want to part with any of them, but with no wall space left. So.
You have to have space to live in. Eh?
There's barely anywhere in our house that doesn't have stuff on the walls already.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's a nice complaint, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Remember that thing where, the kids come home from play school every single day with a picture, and you're sticking them on the wall, and somebody come up with it, you just stick one on top of the other on top of the other.
I have 2 fridges in my house, and oh my god, it's just there, and I've only 2 small ones, but it's still, Mom, look at this, it's going up in the fridge. Yep. Yeah.
We're the same.
You end up with an entire ream of photocopier paper fridge magneted to the door.
Yeah.
And now I have the grandchildren as well, so I mean, I have
Oh no!
on the fridge, that's just a line. There's nothing to it. It's just a red line from a crayon. But I mean, it's a work of art.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've got stuff like that that's in folders that I've kept somewhere sentimental, but not on the fridge anymore.
And Mary, were you interested in art before I can't believe you only took this up so recently, really. Relatively. Were you already interested in art and sketching?
Yeah, I hadn't really had time to do very much of it. There's never enough time to fit all the hobbies in. But I did. I liked art at school, but because I was very science driven, I didn't have enough options to actually do art GCSE. But when I was doing my A levels, I had enough hours to squeeze in an art GCSE as well. So I did that when I was doing my A levels, and so I learned quite a few things there. It was more of it wasn't a pure art module. It was more kind of a multimedia thing. So it was kind of doing textiles and screen printing and just a bit of all sorts, really. So and making sculptures and whatnot. So that was really good fun. And I had a few art lessons on a Saturday morning, just informally with a local artist. And that was back in the 90s. And then I really hadn't done very much painting until I did some voluntary work with the Shore Trust, where we were doing it was an artworks project that I was involved with for 4 years, I think it was. And that really kind of sparked the art side again. I wasn't very good because I'd been out of practice, but again, just doing lots of different things I wouldn't necessarily have picked up at home. And it just seemed natural. I'd always wanted to have a go at astronomy sketching, but didn't think I'd be able to do it, didn't think I'd do it justice. And in my astronomy sketching workshops, I show my first astronomy sketch, and it's not very good, but I hope it makes people realise that you can learn very quickly how to improve from that. And even if your sketch is just a series of circles that overlap in the right places, it's still got scientific value, and you don't have to create a massive piece of art like I do each time. As long as you've got the crater in the right order, the sub-craters where they need to be, and the shadows where they need to be, that's job done. That's all people need to see. So you don't have to create some enormous work of art every time you pick up the pencil.
You don't have to be Banksy. Just go.
No.
Just go for what you can do yourself.
But that's very interesting how you say you get to know the crater, you get to know them much better than if you were just looking at a photo. I can understand that because you're working so closely with your hands. I can understand how I hadn't thought of that before, but it's great.
Yeah, you really have to look, and especially if you're doing it at the eyepiece, you've got to translate what you're seeing there onto a square piece of paper. So I generally will always draw a circle on the page so that I've got an ocular view on my square page as well, because that makes life easier. But I don't get out at the eyepiece as much as I should. I do love working from photographs, because one thing most photos online have had stacking algorithms attributed to them, and you know, you're seeing far more detail than you will ever see at the eyepiece. So actually sketching at the eyepiece in many ways is easier, because you're not seeing the level of detail. I can literally sit there and be close to tears for 15 minutes trying to get this one tiny boulder in the right place, and it really doesn't matter if the boulder isn't even there at all, because if you do it at the eyepiece, you're just not even going to be able to see down to that resolution. So you know, I'm hard on myself sometimes and take my own advice and just chill out a bit.
I have to admit, I still love reading some of the older books about the moon. Jumps to mind is Patrick Moore's Survey of the Moon, and of course the famous one is The Moon by Wilkins and Moore, and everything was hand-drawn. In fact, if you look at Patrick's notebooks, there's not a photograph in them really. Everything is literally drawn at the eyepiece, which really goes to show you just how much information you can really capture. Particularly when you read the notes, and he's commenting about how the sun is changing, the sunline on the moon is changing constantly. So obviously over a series of nights, the Terminator's moving and you're seeing very much different things, which is why we get the optical effects of the lunar X and the lunar Y. And the other one, which infamously pops into my mind, is the blue lagoon on the moon. It's not really a blue lagoon. There is no water except for hydrogen and oxygen in the lunar dust. But it is some people with their telescopes can catch it. Now, I've been following Astro Biscuit, and one of the things that Bicky decided he was going to do was taking a standard commercial instrument as used by an amateur to see if he could get it. Now, obviously, he's having to image, and he's doing lucky imaging, and he reckons he got it. But then again, Bicky's one of these guys who will take a nice pristine telescope tube and cut it down and change the mirror and rearrange the spider with the secondary and change the secondary. It's fun. I like watching it. I learn a few things, but I think reality wise, for me, when I'm doing most of my lunar observations, I'm using a piece of software called Virtual Moon Atlas, but I still always, even to this day, with modern computerized atlases, I have my Rukel out, and that's how I confirm. Oh yeah, that's definitely crater so and so. Yes, I can go straight on the internet. I can pull up an image of the moon. I can find the right quadrant. I can then look for the right looking crater and then relate it to others around it. But I still love getting an old-fashioned paper atlas out, and Rukel still does the business, literally, I think, when it comes to paper atlases. If you want a Rukel, you're going to have to pay for it, unfortunately. The Hamelin version of his lunar atlas retails second, third, fourth, or even fifth hand over £100.
Wow.
To get the most recent version that was ever printed, which was not by Hamelin, I think that was by Cambridge University Press, I could be wrong, you are now talking about £500.
Wow.
That's a lot.
But
I don't know if you guys have heard of a historic female astronomer called Maria Clara Imart. Talk about her in my Women in Astronomy talk, and the reason that's relevant is that her dad was a painter and an engraver, which meant he had enough money to be able to build a private observatory. But he taught Maria how to paint and draw, and she became obsessed with astronomy as well. And she actually produced these most exquisitely beautiful pastel sketches at the eyepiece, and her lunar sketches were so detailed that they were actually able to produce the first ever topographical map of the moon based on them. And you look at them now and the detail in them is just extraordinary. They are beautiful. They were mostly done on blue boards with kind of pastel colours. She did lots of other object sketching as well, but her moon drawings really are just so beautifully detailed. And like you say, Nick, it was like every month just going out every single clear night and just getting the region around the terminator down, because actually even in the space of 4 hours it changes quite a lot. So she was just doing that over and over again until the point she had all of that detail. And of course when the moon's waning you get to see the shadows from the other side, so that gives you even more information to work from. And so yeah, I think it's really amazing that they could make an actual map of the moon using her drawings.
Wow. Can you say her name again, Mary?
Maria Clara Eimart. It's Eimart, I think. Something like that. Yeah, her sketches are just stunning. They really are. Oh. I need to get me some blue sketching paper, then I can mimic her style.
Her dad being a painter and an engraver, as you said, it's probably a talent in her. And then obviously she's an amazing eye for detail. And then growing up in that kind of in life with her father doing what he did, I'm sure she just was able to make the best of the talents she had.
Yeah, she did a lot of etching as well, which is not a technique I've ever done much of, but you know, her etchings are really nice as well. So she was very talented.
Very talented, yeah.
And when was that? What sort of era are we talking? Victorian or earlier?
Hang on, I will dig out my slide that's got the year she was born, because off the top of my head I can never remember dates. I'm just so bad. I will open that up. Hang on a second.
Well, whilst Mary's doing that, if you are looking for a good beginner's book in order for observing the moon, really Peter Grigo's book, The Moon and How to Observe It, is a very good way to start, because he takes you through some basic lunar science and then he starts to introduce lunar features to you. Peter is no longer with us, unfortunately.
Oh.
But as I say, his books are still available. In fact, he also did the Moon Observer's Guide for Phillips as well. So again, that's still a nice little book to take out to the telescope with you and use. Now, as I say, as you get more competent and you start to learn your way around the moon, then you can actually start looking for things like lunar domes, for the many rills, and if you're really lucky and you get a really favourable libration, you can look for the Mare Orientalis, and that is the one where it is actually truncated as far as we're concerned. We can't see the full Mare because it actually goes to the round on the edge and into the round to the far side of the moon.
Dark side, yeah.
But around that area there are some really, really splendid valleys to look for, and they're good fun. They are really a test of how much attention you are paying to what you're looking at, because they aren't easy to see, but with a favourable libration, yes, you can do that, most certainly. And of course, one of the things I love to do is to image Apollo landing sites. And I did manage to successfully, I think it was a year or so ago, image Hadley Rill and Mount Hadley, which was the Apollo 15, I believe, landing site. Obviously, you're not going to see what's left of the lunar modules. They're too small, and amateur instruments certainly won't do it. In fact, the best way that NASA had was to use the images created by LRO and from the previous JAXA mission, which were actually imaging down to something like 1.5 meters on the ground.
The LRO stuff's incredible, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Well, especially the far side as well.
But as I say,
Maria Clara Imart was born in 1676, and her surname has two M's in it, so it's EIMMART.
1676.
Wow.
1676, yeah.
That's amazing.
well, what I can do is I can ask Mary to send me the link for that, and I'll put it into the show notes.
Great.
I will do. But no, I think it's really good fun if you are a kind of astronomer that has been doing it for a long time. I know people can kind of say, oh, the moon's boring, it's the same every month, but it isn't, because like you say, with a different libration you get to see different stuff in that zone, and the seeing's different every time, and obviously the moon isn't fully in sync with our month, so sometimes you get a slightly different percentage than you'd see another month. There's always something new to look at, I think. I don't think I could ever get bored of lunar observing.
No, and the more you look at anything, the more detail you'll notice. The second, the third, the fourth, the fifth time, even looking at exactly the same photograph, you will pick out something else that you've not noticed before.
Very true, yeah.
But basically, although as much as I love comets, and I am known to go off and image the gas giants and Mars, and certainly Venus. Now, Venus is a good target for sketching, particularly looking for the ashen light and sketching the phases of Venus. But as I say, the moon is still fascinating, and it's still highly relevant. In fact, that NASA still has a program in place which is completely dedicated to imaging micrometeorite impacts on the lunar surface, because they are looking to see which areas have the highest concentration of strikes compared to the rest of the moon. Why? Because we are going back to the moon. We're going to have a permanent moon base in operation. Depending on which version you get depends on who's talking about it. Mr. Musk talks about creating Moonbase Alpha, and all the Space 1999 and UFO fans went, yay! You must have watched the programs. NASA is going along with its Gateway project, which is really part of its stepping stones to Mars. How ironic, that in order to go to Mars, we have to go back to the moon. We have to set up a permanent habitat. We can test all the technology we need for Mars there, and if there's an accident or a problem, it's much easier to rescue somebody from the moon than it is from Mars right now.
Oh yeah. We need a base camp before we go further.
Well, yes, the moon is literally days away. Mars, you're months away. And travelling to Mars is always going to be when it's at a more favourable place in the solar system, closer to the Earth. So you launch your mission.
A 2-year window.
Yeah, so you literally have to launch your mission as Mars is coming into close to its closest possible position to get in regards to the Earth, to get there the quickest. If you're a robot, you can afford to take the long road in a lot of cases. But with humans, it has to be the quicker trip because of the solar storms and everything. And again, we're finding what's now believed to be lava tubes on the moon. In fact, there is a belief, and it's not been proven, I don't think it's been totally proven scientifically yet, that the lunar rills are in fact possibly collapsed lava tubes.
Wow. And that's where they're talking about setting up any kind of colony, aren't they?
Basically, yes. It's the best place to be because it gives you protection not only from the micrometeorites, it also affords some protection from solar radiation.
There's also a problem with the regolith. It's very sticky, and it's very hard on humans. Like, you can't, if you breathe it in or anything like that, it's quite problematic. So maybe being underground, you'd be away from that too.
Yeah, And of course, the best thing about the regolith being sticky, if you're going to have to build your base on the moon, what are you going to build it with? Regolith. The moon's version of concrete.
Mm.
Yeah, just don't get it in your lungs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it'll turn to concrete in your lungs.
Well,
Exactly.
they reckon it's as bad as breathing in volcanic ash.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really sharp, isn't it? The moon
Yeah.
dust, I think.
Yeah.
I remember reading. Nasty.
And sticks to your suits, the space suits and everything.
Well, yeah.
So, well, one thing you won't be able to ever take, you're talking about landing sites, is the Chinese one, because they're on the far side of the moon
Yeah.
at the moment, which is great. It's really interesting.
It's very interesting, but will they tell us what we want to know? That's what everybody wants to know. But will they share that with everyone? I wonder.
They're being pretty okay about it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Chinese
Yeah,
are sharing the data from their lander. And of
Yeah.
course, they've proven that you can put a communication satellite in orbit around the moon
Okay.
to provide a relay to the far side.
Mm.
And before anybody brings, I'm not talking about us, but the audience says, "Oh, what about the dark side?" There is no dark side of the moon. There's only the
Dark
far side.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you, Pink Floyd.
Yes, they have a lot to answer for.
It's stuck in my head now. Yeah, dark side of the moon.
Yeah, a lot of people that are kind of new to astronomy don't realise that if the moon is a slender crescent that's like only 3% lit, the far side of the moon is going to be 97% illuminated. So
Yeah.
it's a sphere that always has half of itself illuminated at any one time. It's just that we don't see all of it. It's one of my pet peeves actually in art, in astronomy inspired art or any art that has a crescent moon in it. They'll put stars in the space where the rest of the moon's disk would be, and it really irks me. And I know that it looks pretty, but it's impossible. The stars are further away. You can't do that.
They don't put the shadow of the dark part that you're not seeing.
No,
Even
I always do, but they don't.
Yeah, we all know it's there, but it's not in any artist. It's just not there, But it is there. It's always there.
Sometimes you get earth shine as well on it,
Oh
I
yes.
love that.
which I believe is something to do with, for us, it's that there's clouds out in the Atlantic. And so you always know if you see earth shine on the moon that there's probably going to be rain in a couple of days. Although, even if there's no earth shine, there's probably going to be rain in a couple of days.
Yeah.
I've never
No,
heard
not
that
yet.
about the clouds. I thought it was just general flashback from the Earth. I thought it was
Yeah.
due to atmospheric conditions that made it brighter sometimes than others, but I don't know. I just know it's reflected light that's
Reflected off the earth, yeah.
It's very, very beautiful though. I just love it so much.
And Mary, how did you get first interested in astronomy generally, apart from the sketching?
Well, basically since I was a small child, and I think that's because my mum was one of the children that was dragged out of bed to watch the moon landing, so she was always fascinated with the moon and still is. And I got my kind of interest of the moon from her. We always used to watch it, and my bedroom was south facing when I was little, and chronic insomniac from being a child, I was destined to be an astronomer, and I basically used to just open my curtains and stare at the moon for hours and hours. And then obviously the Ladybird books really helped with the constellations and stuff like that, and it was one of those things that was always like a background hobby really for me, but work got in the way. I moved to London, and with that amount of light pollution it's difficult to see anything. But years later, when I injured my back, I suddenly found that I had a lot of time on my hands, so I then thought, well, I got into astronomy, kind of connected with the astronomy community, and I was given the option to study the astronomy GCSE, and it was at a school that I used to work at up in Lancashire, and my mum and I and one other adult would turn up on a Friday after school with the year 9 pupils, and we would all do the astronomy together, and that really kind of reignited my passion. And I then went on and studied through the Open University, and about 6 years ago I started doing talks, and I'm now a freelance writer of astronomy things, so it's kind of living the dream. If I hadn't injured my back, I probably wouldn't be doing this, because my career would have carried on down the other path. So I'm really, really happy that, I'll take being disabled over a life that doesn't involve astronomy, to be honest. I just love my life now. I'm so grateful to work in this field.
Oh,
Yeah.
really lovely to hear.
Yeah. I was going to say, as unfortunate as you said about your accident, it kind of worked out wonderfully for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would not change a single day, not at all.
You and astronomy were just meant to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice to suddenly have time, because obviously if you're going to get up at 6 o'clock for work, you can't stay up all night, even with the best will in the world. And once you get past 30, the late nights start to catch up a bit. I can't do it like I used to, that's for sure. I get into a cranky, tearful mess if I do it for 3 nights running. But no, it is just lovely. And now having a husband that's also an astronomer is really good as well. And we just live, sleep and breathe astronomy, really, which is great.
Gosh, that's amazing. That's really good.
Yeah, I think I said this on the SPA live last night. When you are the only astronomer in the family, there's this tendency to, oh, do you really need to buy that? Whereas we're like, oh, that'd be awesome, let's buy one. So we end up buying all of the things without talking each other out of it. But it's good, we both have different interests in astronomy, actually. So he built me my own telescope here because we kept arguing over whose turn it was to use the observatory. Because we both work in such different ways. There are so many ways to do photography, and we can't agree on a single bit of it. So it's really good that he can image the things he's interested in, I can image the things I'm interested in on my pier, and we can both just do our own thing. But we bounce ideas off each other and have lots of geeky conversations. It's awesome.
And get your nerd on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good. And I think one of my friends once said it's a good job Mark's an astronomer because nobody else would put up with me, and that's probably quite true.
My poor dog is sick listening to me, but anyway. So, could we talk about the flybys on Venus? Because they just look absolutely amazing. The 2 flybys 3 hours apart on the 9th and 10th of August.
Was it planned that the 2 would fly by together, or has it just been fluke?
Don't actually know that part.
It's the flybys. They're in Venus on the 9th and 10th of August. They're 33 hours apart, but they're going to take swing bys. They're going to lose a little bit of their energy through the orbital, just to go down and reach, so they can get nearer to
Mercury.
Yeah, to get it in the is it a Mercury's orbit?
Solar orbiter is going into a closer solar orbit than most, and Bepi Colombo is going to Mercury.
Yeah, they're doing swing bys, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, they weren't launched at the same time. They're a couple of years apart, so it could be just a coincidence that they're both flying by. I'm not sure if that was a plan or not.
Yeah.
It's awesome that they are.
It is amazing. They said they'd be able to take it from 2 different points, the environmental conditions, like.
Yeah.
Well, that's the great thing. With both of these probes, within 33 hours apart, they will be able to cover different parts of the planet using completely different instrument platforms.
Yes.
So for the ground teams, it's a perfect time to wake up all the science instruments and to do some science. That way they know everything's working, and they can shut it down again for a short period until they get to where they're going to be staying. Bepi Colombo is going to try to go into orbit around Mercury. It has an awful lot of energy it has to drop to successfully do that.
To get into the orbit, yeah.
So I don't think we're going to get any photographs back till they've kind of gone past them, so that, because when they're facing towards the sun, their cameras will be destroyed, so they have to be kind of gone a little bit around them before we should get some interesting photographs back.
But I think Venus is just, it's a hidden, well, not a hidden gem, but it's an absolute gem that we know so little about. So anything more to see would just be absolutely fascinating. I'd be studying any pictures at all over and over again to see if there's
definitely.
We only really have that one good, the one good picture, and then we only have the clouds and
then The life in the clouds thing is gone now. That's pretty much been
Yeah.
poo-pooed, unfortunately.
Well, yes and no, because basically, when they went back into the Pioneer data, when Pioneer went to Venus,
Yeah.
basically it really there's so much data that they had, it wasn't examined. But when
Yeah.
they actually looked at the Pioneer data, they found that the phosphine signal
Yeah.
on the it was recorded by Pioneer. This is why NASA really has changed some of its missions, and there are two new probes going to Venus purely
Yeah.
because of this phosphine signal, and they basically now we just need to get to find out what's causing it, and it is only in a certain part of the atmosphere. It's definitely not from the planetary surface. It's too inhospitable.
Yeah.
Sulfuric rain isn't exactly the most inducing thing to anything.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
even
But
any,
there are extremophiles live in sulfuric acid vents under the ocean, so I'm not ruling it out completely
Yeah.
that something could be there.
I don't think anything. I think we just need to open. I've always saying this: open our minds
well, as I say,
to have our own path. So we need to open up our thoughts on that. I think.
I think our real best hope for life elsewhere in the solar system is going to be Europa,
Yes.
because
Yes.
basically it's got everything, all the things we need. It's got saline, salt water, it's got an ice cap, and it's got a heat source, Jupiter.
Jupiter.
Didn't they find some strange evidence for something possibly microbial going on Enceladus recently?
Yes, there is
Yeah,
that
I read
possibility.
something about Enceladus that they've picked up something in the plumes quite recently.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what it was.
So basically, once we go back to Jupiter,
Yeah.
there's going to be an awful lot of time spent on Enceladus. There's going to be a dedicated mission to Europa.
Is that called the juice missions? Is that the new?
Yeah, the
Yes.
Jupiter
Yeah.
Ice Moon
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
isn't that
Yeah.
due for launch next year?
I believe it does go next year, yes.
Yeah.
That
And
would be amazing.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's going to be
Europa's fascinating.
a huge amount of the moons are fascinating, though. I mean, they all have their own little things going on that we don't know yet. I think some of them might have a lot more interest than even some of the planets.
Well,
Yeah.
the other problem, of course, is Jupiter's magnetosphere,
Yeah.
and the fact that the environment around Jupiter is not very friendly to biologics. There's an intense radiation belt. Now, that is probably part of what is keeping moons like Enceladus and Europa warm.
Yeah.
There's a tidal influence, there's a radiation effect, and that is probably what's going to allow perhaps a primitive single cell life form to exist in a saline ocean. So I think Europa is our best bet.
Yeah.
As I say, who knows, Enceladus may yet amaze us.
Mm-hmm.
But
They're
we
all
shall see.
fascinating. Yeah, we shall see. I wish we could see.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't like waiting, you know.
as they said in the end of the movie 2010, all of these are yours except one. Do not attempt to land on Europa.
Wow, yeah.
Have to get a space movie reference in somewhere.
It is far, I think, the most interesting, although I think there's a lot of interest in a lot of the moons, but I think Europa is definitely maybe the one we should be shooting for.
Well, if we can get through the ice,
Exactly.
then we have a chance.
How thick is the ice? Like,
It's extremely thick.
I don't know offhand. Also, getting through the ice and drilling through the ice, if we do need to, like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Should we leave it alone? Could it be completely disrupting everything, you know?
Mm.
Well,
And imagine how hard that ice would be that far out.
Yes. Yeah. Be different types of ice than we have any clue what we're dealing with, you know.
You know, like it could be like rock.
Yeah. It would be like
On
rock.
the subject of drilling, you were saying that Perseverance has had some issues with its first sample collection, isn't it?
Yeah, the tube, the drill did its drilling, and the tube that should have had some sample in it didn't have anything in it, so they're not sure exactly. They're looking into it now. That's just after coming up, actually,
Yeah, they
the
say it
last
was
24 hours.
yeah, the properties of the Martian rock might have had a problem with it.
Did you see the size of the pile around it? I think all of the dust they drilled out just ended up on the outside of the hole instead of in
Yeah.
the tube.
So, but they have more tubes, and you know, they're working on it. And they said they may be having another announcement next week. I saw a little bit more about it then after we first talked about it. And again, they said like the Curiosity had problems too, because the rock or the type of soil, it's not Earth soil, it's different, you know. So hopefully they'll be able to solve it and figure it out, whatever it is. It's autonomous, like it just does it all by itself. It's not getting any instructions from Earth.
Right.
So yeah, they have to try and figure that out, you know.
okay.
It's amazing, isn't
So,
it?
based on geophysical modelling, it's believed that Europa's crust is about 20 kilometres thick.
Wow.
That was work done by Robert Pappalardo of Brown University. Now, he disagrees with Greenberg because he thinks that Europa's crust is 20 kilometres thick. Greenberg thinks that cracks in the ice could provide the ideal habitat for organisms on Europa.
Yes.
The cracks are caused by tidal pull of the gas giant Jupiter, which basically squeezes Europa like a tennis ball.
Gives
And
it
it's
some heat then.
it's squeezing it is making the energies cause it'll give it the heat. It'll keep it going, you know.
Now, Greenberg thinks that Europa's ice is only a few kilometres thick, and that the cracks could actually reach down to the ocean below.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Either way, you're going to need something bigger than a DeWalt to get through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And probably a lot of patience.
Yes.
Well, keep in mind that the temperature is minus 160 Celsius.
It's going to be harder than
on
rock,
Europa.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It is harder than rock. Just think how compacted that would be. Like, we have no clue. Like, yeah,
And any kind of craft trying to work in that
and to get
freezing
there or
condition.
land or any way do we even have a drill bit or any type of material on our planet that can get through that ice? We don't know.
Yeah, it's called a laser.
Oh, with the laser, that's true. The heat. But see, the heat could be fecking up with what, you know, Europa doesn't need the heat, maybe. Not from us, not artificially.
But as I say, you could use a laser to cut through the ice. You don't have to use a physical drill, or you could make a version of what the oil industry uses to drill through the bedrock on a planet. This planet.
Reminds me of Dallas. Do you remember
There you
JR?
Are we going to call the drill bit JR then?
The JR.
Oh, yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, it was always something. Cliff Barnes had one at one stage, and, you know, I do remember that.
I loved that programme when I was a kid.
And my dog is called Bobby Patrick Ewing, so as you can imagine, I have a bit of a problem with it as well.
And I thought I had problems with potentially calling cats Newton, Plato, Archimedes,
Lovely.
Carter.
We had a cat
Eureka.
once,
It's a
called
Eureka,
Gravity.
Eureka.
reference. Town called Eureka.
Eureka. Yeah. We had a cat called Gravity.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
He was lovely. Anyway.
We digress again.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they'll be able to figure out the problem with Perseverance and get that sorted. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's called Perseverance, so that's what they need.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Good point.
I think the thing is, we've got so many probes around Mars right now. It's unbelievable. So many nations are there. The UAE's there, China's there, the European Space Agency's there, NASA's there, and it's really it's really a case of very crowded sky. And what happens when a comet decides to come very, very close to Mars, like one did recently, and everybody had to move their spacecraft to the other side of the planet. You remember that, don't you, Mary? But I know what Neil was going to mention. He was briefly going to mention the fact that we have the potential, I'm going to use that word again, for a naked eye comet next year. Now, let me pull up Messenger, because I know he mentioned it in detail, so just give me 1 second.
No problem.
And here we go, Messenger.
Well, just while have you got it? Well, what can I just mention? The solar orbiter has a special protective sunscreen. Inverted commas. It's a coating that was developed here in Ireland by a company called Embio, and it's based on burnt bones.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how, but you know, in cave paintings, the paint is still perfect in those caves. No, okay, they're away from sunlight, but they discovered that the burnt bone paint bonded with the cliff face that it was on the cave face. And don't ask me how, but this Irish man called John O'Donoghue came from a medical background. He was working on implants for humans, so that the body wouldn't reject. So he was covering metal implants with bone, which would be, I think it's cattle bones that are burnt and obviously cleaned totally and everything. But somehow or other he figured out that it would work on spacecraft, that you could bond it onto the whatever coating you're putting in your spacecraft, bond it onto the metal. It doesn't flake, it doesn't shrink. So it's a really good product. So it's been used on the solar orbiter. Yeah. And then with Bepi Colombo, we also have another Irish company that's done all the critical onboard software. That one's called Captech. But so we're very proud, of course, because we're a small country and coming up with this. But the UK is also leading the way. They are at the heart of the solar orbiter mission. They won like 200 million worth of contracts, and the UK Space Agency invested 20 million in it. It was built in Stevenage by Airbus, launched in 2020. So that was what the other one was 2018, wasn't it? That both was, I think.
I'm not sure.
But they've already given us some nice images of the sun from inside the orbit of Mercury, which is closer than ever before, and it has revealed these omnipresent little miniature solar flares, what they call campfires. Yeah. So that's really all on that. It's just
absolutely fascinating. I mean, the burnt bone is literally the best sunscreen ever. So far.
Amazing. I have a little sample of it here. I can't show it to you, but I have a little sample that Embio gave me, and it's.
And what's it like? Is it a paint or is it a powder or?
Well, it's on. They have it on some kind of a film, but it's black. They developed a white one as well, but this one's black, and it's as thin as it's thinner than a hair. Like it's amazing stuff. But so we're very proud of that, of course. They also, the other company, Captech, is also, as well as Bepi Colombo, it was involved with the Rosetta mission, and it's on the JUICE mission, the Jupiter Icy Moons mission. So so good, a nice joint bit of work between, obviously a lot more from the UK, bigger, but nice bit of work on both sides of the water here.
From the the Anglo-Irish point. Everything's coming across.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so...
Now, did you get it?
Yep. So basically, this is a comet 2014 UN 271, Bardanelli-Bernstein. Now, the thing is, it's not due to perihelion for another 10 years, but it's already very bright. The absolute magnitude in its discovery image was a magnitude of 7.8.
Really?
That's what they're saying.
10 years from perihelion?
And it's at magnitude 7.8.
Wow.
It's
Could
an
be-
Oort cloud comet. Now, the
Wow.
problem is, being an Oort cloud comet, it may not survive. And this is also a non-periodic comet.
Okay.
So
What
basically,
kind of si-
we're going to
kind of
see it
size?
just the once.
Just the once. Sorry, what kind of size, Nick, would you have any idea that might be?
Right, so we're looking at, originally they thought the nucleus was around 100 kilometers in diameter.
Right. Well,
But if the cometary activity is present at the time of the original observations, it could actually be significantly smaller. Now,
Yeah.
back on the 22nd of June of this year, cometary activity was observed and reported by Tim Lister at the Las Cambres Observatory in Sutherland, South Africa, and by Luca Buzzi at the Sky Gems Remote Telescope in Namibia. So the object's heliocentric distance was 28.818 AU, 3 billion kilometers, and it's already brighter than predicted. It's got a slightly elongated
Wow.
comma,
That's incredible.
reported
It's
by
amazing.
Sky Gems to be approximately 15 arc seconds wide. Now, this is thought to have been active at 23.8 AUs. That's 3.6 billion kilometers. And maybe even active at 29 AU, 4.3 billion kilometers. So,
You do have to fear it won't survive.
Yes.
It's like that, this distance.
well,
Yeah.
given the fact that it's active this far out, so the nucleus is significantly smaller than the early estimates. And by the way, I've already heard it already from one person who was commenting on the last Comet Watch, says that this comet's going to hit the Earth. Don't even go there, because we track these things, we model, we do what's called N-body simulations, and they take into consideration Jupiter, Saturn, and the other gas giants, on how a comet or any body is affected. And
Yeah.
to be honest, we're not seeing it might be very close, which is why people are thinking it might be very bright. But no, we're not going to see something that bad. Now, if you think about this, C2010 U3 Bottini was observed out at 25.8 AU. Now, cometary activity at these distances can actually be generated by supervolatiles such as carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide.
okay.
Now, we've been observing this since 2014. The observation arc is dozens of observations over several years. So you can see the orbit in JPL horizons. Its semi-major axis is 20,000 AU, 0.3 of a light year. So it's its furthest distance, or aphelion, of 40,000 AU, 0.6. That's in the Oort cloud, and that was about 1.5 million years ago. It will come to perihelion on the 23rd of January 2031 at a distance of 10.95 AUs, which is just inside Saturn's orbit. Its closest approach to the Earth is on April the 25th of the same year at a distance of 10.11 AU.
Mm.
So it will cross the elliptic plane in August of 2033 when it's outbound at 12 AUs from the Sun. So even at the remotest thing, its outbound orbital period would be approximately 4.5 million years, with an aphelion distance of 54,000 AU. That's 0.9 light years. It's only really loosely bound to the Sun, and of course the galactic tide is subject to permutation by it. So we could actually lose this. It's got a current declination of minus 47 degrees. It's going to be best seen from the southern hemisphere. Guess where we're all going for a holiday in 2031? Now, the Vera Rubin Observatory We'll be watching it regularly. Its cometary activity and evolution will be monitored as it comes into perihelion.
Is that not too bright for that observatory to look at? They're normally looking for really faint things, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they've got a program in. They've got something in place to deal with it. But once at perihelion, it's not going to be expected to get any brighter than Pluto, which is between mags 13 and 16. And it's more likely to reach the brightness of Pluto's moon Charon, which is at magnitude 16.8. It doesn't enter the inner solar system, and that's where it has to come to be more active. Even if it gets to the magnitude of Pluto, it's going to need a 200 millimeter telescope to be visually seen.
But if it's already at mag 7, will it not get brighter in the short term?
I don't know what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on with this one, Mary.
Strange, isn't it?
Yeah, its Jupiter Moid is 6.174 AU. It's with an assumed albedo of between 0.04 and 0.10. As I say, this is one for the books. Its total magnitude against M1 is 6.7 plus or minus 0.7%.
Wow.
So it's just going to swing by Saturn. It's not coming in any closer.
No. This is why it's not going to impact the Earth, because it is not. It will do an orbit around Saturn and it'll start heading out again.
Heading out again. So Bruce Willis and Armageddon is not going to happen.
No.
Do you know, I swear that at least once a week I get someone on Twitter asking me about the next thing that's going to hit Earth. Twitter is obsessed with this concept.
But
yeah. So
who knows?
Throw that away. Yeah.
We actually may send this as an ambassador to another solar system because of the galactic tide. It's one of those things. It might still stay bound to the sun, but then again, it might not. And if it doesn't, it will do a Borisov, so to speak.
Go off on his jollies.
Yeah. I think in reality, the best comets we're going to get, I think, is going to be 2017 K2 Pan-STARRS, which is still brightening. It's still coming in. That will come into the inner solar system, and then it will go around the sun. May not survive its encounter with the sun, but it may put on a decent show. I've imaged it when it was back at magnitude 16. In fact, I had to do photometry on the image to make sure that what I was marking as the comet was indeed a comet. It is basically about 4 pixels across on a photograph. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? But who knows? We will literally, we're going to have to wait until 2031 to see what this comet does. But prediction-wise, it's currently very bright, comparatively speaking, for its distance. But that could all change. Comets are like cats. They have tails and they do them exactly as they wish. Thank you, David Levy, for that wonderful email signature.
So it's not watch this space, it's watch this in space.
Yeah.
You just have to wait and see.
So, 200 millimeters.
I'm looking forward to what the press are going to come up with on that one.
It's going to hit us. It's another dinosaur job.
When I
And
say
we're the
looking forward
dinosaurs.
to, I don't mean looking forward to. I mean hit my head against the table.
Someone will have something to say about it anyway. The newspaper. Not that's your body.
That's assuming we've still got newspapers.
That's
Yeah.
true. They're dying great well.
But no, seriously, it is very, very bright right now. I don't think it's going to survive, and even if it does, it will get dimmer. You need a 10-inch telescope minimum to see it, and even then it's going to be a very faint dot. But
We like a challenge.
absolutely, bring it on, baby.
Keep things interesting, hey?
Well, we've actually been going for nearly an hour and a half. We're at 1
Wow.
hour 24 minutes.
Time
And
flies.
25 seconds. Bing. So I really think it's probably time we go, because for us recording this show it is 20 to 11
Yeah.
on a Saturday night.
On a Saturday night.
Yes. And there's no movies except on my computer. But it's
Well, it's
raining.
very interesting and
It's-
lovely to have Mary. Mary's been just so lovely to have you here and to hear all about
Thank
sketching and
you.
everything.
Thank you very much, Mary. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So
Wonderful. Maybe
on
you'll
that
come back and
bombshell,
join us,
it is
Beth.
time to say good night.
And good night for me.
And good night from me.
And
And
good night from
her.
me.
All right.